Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, dwyervip.com for American football and basketball picks. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now let's pretend for a moment that you're Alexander Povetkin, right? You're not the tallest man at heavyweight, but you know privately that you're one of the best athletes at heavyweight. To figure out what I'm talking about in terms of athletics, just look at the first 2 rounds of his fight against Wach. Just look at the way the guys move. Just look at the level of coordination. Right? Who's able to get from point A to point B faster than the other guy? Who has the better reflexes? Who is coordinated so when they get to point B, they're actually ready to throw punches? Who has the faster hand speed? Right? Who seems to be able to dictate the pace of the fight? Right? You don't have to have a stopwatch out there. It's not all speed. It's really agility. And you understand that Povetkin, quite frankly, is a great athlete. Now here he's fighting Wach, who is a big man. Wach has gotten by on size and grit, not athleticism. Right? You notice, too, and I think this is the key in the fight, that Povetkin is using the athleticism gap in this fight to do certain things. And Wach can't counter because Wach doesn't have ring coverage. Right? He's a big guy, but you don't get the feeling that he can hit you from halfway across the ring. Like, let's say, a David Haye can. Like, let's say, a Deontay Wilder can. Right? Whatever you think about Haye's game, whatever you think about Wilder's game, let's at least acknowledge that these guys can hit you from halfway across the ring. Right? They know how to drop that front foot down, lean forward, extend, and still have power on the punch when the punch gets to you. Right? Take a look at the Audley Harrison, Deontay Wilder fight. Right now, Wilder, who I personally consider to be limited, certainly knows how to throw a right hand. And he can throw that right hand from distance. Now here, you have an interesting dynamic going on in the Povetkin-Wach fight. Right? Povetkin is hanging on the outskirts of the pocket. Now that's interesting because Povetkin actually has an inside game. But here he's decided, rather than go Mike Tyson on Wach, in other words, rather than get inside of Wach's arms and start to go to work up close on it. Think Tyson, think Joe Frazier, think Rocky Marciano. Instead, you have Povetkin outside, right? Moving away from Wach. He's on his back foot. His game is to have Wach throw a jab. Then after Wach throws the jab, Povetkin's dodging the jab, then he's jumping in. Right? He's leading with power shots. As the fight progresses, you'll notice he jumps in more and more with his left hand, right? He's throwing a left hook to the body. But understand, he's waiting for Wach to throw his jab so he can counter the jab. Wach, unfortunately, can't suddenly fake like he's throwing a jab and then take a step forward. Throw a big Deontay Wilder type right hand to hit Povetkin if Povetkin continues to stay outside. Nor does Wach have the savviness to set a trap, right? Pretend to be throwing a jab, but really it's about the right hand, back here. So when the guy jumps in, think Manny Pacquiao jumping in to Juan Manuel Marquez, you have that right hand cocked, right? You've watched the guy jump in enough times to know where he's going to be. You're not even trying to hit him with the jab. You're just trying to get the guy to jump in into your trap so you can hit him with the punches you want to hit him with. Right? Against Manny Pacquiao, Marquez throws a great right hand, knocks Manny out cold. Other guys, I've seen other fights where guys have you jump into uppercuts. Guys have you jump into body shots. Wach's not that fighter. Right? He doesn't know, he's not coordinated enough to know what to do when Povetkin jumps in. Now, since Povetkin is a world-class heavyweight, since he's in line to fight Deontay Wilder, since, quite frankly, he has the credibility, since, after all, he is an Olympic gold medalist, right? Since, after all, he did have a share of the heavyweight title at one point, since he has the credibility to actually call out whoever wins the Klitschko-Tyson Fury fight, since he's one of the world's best heavyweights, let's talk about what Wach could have done other than set Marquez-type traps to offset what Povetkin's doing. Right? Now, as I said earlier in this video, the problem is Wach doesn't have the athleticism. He's flat-footed on the canvas, right? He would need to be more up on his feet. He would need to understand, quite frankly, that he's going to have to move and pivot, right? You can't be in there, and the problem is Wach's gotten a lot of KOs. So what he knows is coming in and blowing out an opponent. Right? He's not prepared for dealing with a guy who he's actually going to have to outbox. Right? Now let me say this. You're throwing a jab, and I'm not a trainer. I'm just a guy here online, boxing fan. But if I throw a jab and you're dodging by the jab and coming in, isn't that when I should be prepared to turn as I throw the jab? In other words, I can't have stationary angles. Right? If I'm throwing the jab and you're always coming in on my vision, right, to the right side of the jab, shouldn't there come a time where I'm actually mobile with the jab? Right? Where, rather than throw the jab where you are, I start to throw the jab where you're going to be. Right? Because Povetkin's not coming over the top of the jab. He's not throwing the right hand over the jab. He's coming in this way. So shouldn't Wach have started to throw the jab over here? Shouldn't Wach have turned a bit? Isn't reality three-dimensional? Isn't this fight three-dimensional? Let's go a step further. Shouldn't he have altered when he throws the jab? Right? Shouldn't the timing have been a little bit of a surprise? One of the things I like about Miguel Vasquez, one of my favorite fighters, is his jab just seems to be off beat, off rhythm. Right? It lands on his opponent. Opponents spend a lot of their fights against Vasquez figuring out when he's going to throw that jab. That's a guy with a good jab who knows how to use it. You need the element of surprise. Shouldn't Wach have faked like he's throwing the jab a little bit? Shouldn't he have? Right? Let me say this too. Vladimir Klitschko fought Povetkin. Povetkin now is a little bit savvier than he was with Klitschko, right? Klitschko kept holding him as he came in, kept pushing him under his underarm. Now you'll notice when Povetkin jumps in, he doesn't jump in all the way, right? He jumps in just far enough to get off his shots, but he's not going to allow you to tuck him under your underarm, right? Another fighter who's savvy that way comes in, sometimes has an arm bar up to make sure you don't clinch him, is light heavyweight champion Sergey Kovalev. But if you're a big man like Wach is, shouldn't you have made your weight and size a little bit of an issue? Right? If Povetkin's coming up to here, right, as he jumps inside, shouldn't you take the step forward to smother him? At a minimum. Right? Also, as you're turning and changing the angle on the jab and faking so the jab's a little bit unexpected, shouldn't you be doubling and tripling up on the jab? So the guy who's running in is running into the punch. Have the guy knock himself out. Have him run into your punches. Now, Wach doesn't have that level of coordination. Right? All right. If you don't have that level of coordination, then let's get crazy for a moment here. Why is he throwing the jab at all? Let's get provocative. You're fighting a guy who's countering you. Why give him anything to counter? Right? Isn't the point here that Povetkin is on his back foot, trying to jump in at strategic moments? Let's think this out. Why isn't Wach on his back foot? Why is Wach walking forward and literally playing into Povetkin's game plan? Keep in mind too, and I understand, the fight was in a venue that was friendly to Povetkin, but understand that's a double-edged sword. You're the native son. There's a lot of pressure on you to make the fight. There's a lot of pressure on you to look good. I never understood fully why, when someone was fighting Floyd Mayweather in Las Vegas, where Floyd lives, I never fully understood why guys didn't say, okay, look, let's say I'm Manny Pacquiao. Why am I pursuing Floyd over by the ropes? So that Floyd, of course, has his back up against the ropes, is able to rest, right, is able to counter what I'm doing. If you know the guy is trying to get you over by the ropes, why go over there? Why not motion to him? Right? Because the dynamic here of throwing a jab and then getting countered isn't working for Wach. If the goal is to win the fight, then why are you in round after round pursuing a strategy that's not working? Now, I know YouTube Nation disagrees with me, but I'm telling you, sometimes fighters have to be boring. Right? Sometimes you have to say, look, I'm not going to throw something that you're going to counter. I'm telling you, you look at a Bernard Hopkins fight, Bernard Hopkins, Jermaine Taylor, both fights, and you're going to notice in the early rounds, Hopkins hardly throws any punches. Right? Hardly throws any punches. Right? There's a method to the madness. You don't want the other guy who might have a hand speed advantage on you, who might have an age advantage on you, right, or a reflex advantage on you. You don't want the other guy to get into a habit of countering what you're doing. You also want to test the mental toughness of the other guy. Is he prepared to get booed by the home crowd if this fight doesn't have action? If it looks like the guys are just standing around and looking at each other, like Audley Harrison against David Haye, the early rounds of that fight, right? Force a counterpuncher to take the lead. Get him out of his comfort zone. Now, somehow Wach wasn't prepared to do that. I'm telling you, a lot of bigger guys show up thinking, hey, I'm just going to come and knock out the smaller guy. He doesn't have my size. A good big man beats a good little man. Right? I'm just telling you that hinders a fighter in his understanding of the sport. If you're fighting a little guy who's countering you, don't give him an opportunity to counter you. Take away his plan A. See what his plan B is. Maybe the guy loses it, starts to lead recklessly, starts to leave himself open, more open than he is when he's just countering you. And you're throwing a lazy jab. Keep in mind, too, if you're throwing a jab and a guy has it timed so when your hand's like this, he's jumping to the side and hitting you, you got to make sure you pull that jab back faster, don't you? In fact, if you know where the guy's going to be, why aren't you setting up false cues to get the guy there, right? Pretend to be throwing a jab. Have the guy jump in. Then throw the punches you really want. Let's get even further outside the box. You're fighting Povetkin in front of his crowd. Right? There's pressure on him. More pressure on him than on you. Right? First, don't give him easy punches to counter. Next, let me say this. If he's on his back foot and he's far away from you, I know the boxing public's going to disagree with me, but why not just throw some wild punches that you know are not going to land? Just throw crazy haymaker type punches. I'm telling you, I used to go to fights. I used to have bad seats, right? You'd see a guy in the ring just throwing some big shots. And you'd be back there not quite sure what's going on. This was before they had all these high screen TVs everywhere. You're back there not knowing what's going on. But you're appreciating the effort. Why didn't Wach just throw some big shots? Make it look like he's trying to knock out Povetkin, even if he knew the odds of those big shots landing were slim. Keep in mind, the real reason you're throwing big shots is just to get a rise out of the judges. It's just to get a rise out of the crowd. Have the crowd think, oh man, this guy's come here to knock our fighter out. Right? Understand, if you're throwing big shots and the other guy's the hometown fighter, and all he's doing is standing around waiting for an opportunity to counter you, his fans might start booing. There's pressure on him. He's the guy in the days leading up to the fights who knows the local reporters. He's the guy getting interviewed. Right? Fight night comes and you're there just throwing wild punches at times. And you know the punches are going to miss, so you're throwing them in a way where you can't get countered. Right? Rather than lead with a jab, you just throw a right hand for the hell of it and then turn away from the guy. Right? Right hand misses him by this much. Okay, it didn't land. He knows it. You know it. Some judge is going to think, wow, he's trying to knock him out. Someone in the bad seats where I usually used to sit, they're going to, look and say, oh, man, was that Wach swinging for the fences here? Wach didn't add any of that excitement. Instead, he's in with a superior athlete, and he allows him to stay on the outskirts of the pocket. He throws a jab, and it's a lazy jab. He doesn't even pull it back quickly. Right? He's not tripling up on the jab. He's not changing the angle of the jab. He's the one who gets busted up, not Povetkin. And keep in mind, he's the one throwing the jab. Let me say this. I do think Povetkin-Wilder will be a much more interesting fight than this one. Right? While I view Wilder as limited, I do think he has great ring coverage. He can hit you from across the street. Right? And let me just say, too, he does have a jab, and he is an athlete who does move better than Mariusz Wach. Right? In a Wilder-Povetkin fight, I would expect Povetkin to want to get inside on Wilder. Right? We've seen Wilder against slow-footed Bermane Stavern. Right? We've seen Wilder against slugger types who really couldn't move that well. We haven't seen Wilder against a guy who's superior on the inside, who can fight small, and who's actually a better athlete than him. Right? But I don't think Povetkin would be able to fight Wilder by staying on the outskirts of the pocket, just dodging a jab, hanging out there, and then jumping in, right, trying to counter the jab. That's too dangerous. Because if Wilder inserts a long right hand in place of the jab, and if that hand lands, and let me point out, Wach landed some of these jabs. Right? Povetkin gets a little bit sloppy here. He's outside, he sees the jab, and then Povetkin says, okay, let me go jump in. Sometimes, Povetkin seemed to be hypnotized a bit, where the jab came, and then you could tell Povetkin would say, okay, let me go jump in. Then the jab would actually hit him. Right? You can't afford that against a Deontay Wilder, who could do a 1-2 on you. Have the jab hit you and hold you in place, then have the right hand come in. Right? Let me say this too. Wilder likes to hit guys up top. He's not a great body puncher. We know that. I encourage people to go back and look at the film of Povetkin against, I forget his name. He's was the cruiserweight champion. Marco Huck. Right? You're going to notice that Povetkin can actually duck under punches. The million-dollar question is if Povetkin comes in low. Go back and look at the Marciano-Ali dream fight, right? It's a fictional fight, but the guys actually play themselves in the film. And you're going to notice Marciano's strategy was to come in low on Ali. The point was that Ali, who hardly went to the body, would have a hard time throwing power punches that low. Right? Povetkin's much shorter than Wilder. And Wilder can't fight small. Povetkin can. If Povetkin comes in low, think Mike Tyson. If Povetkin comes in low on Wilder, does Wilder's right hand still hurt him? Anyway, those are my random thoughts on this one. Wach just didn't have the athleticism, the reflexes, or the boxing savvy to keep up with a superior athlete. Right? It's a little surprising to me that Wach couldn't just try to bully Povetkin. Right? If you're in against a guy who's smaller and he's staying outside, why not try to employ some roughhouse tactics? Why not just run up to him, almost like a football player, just to pin him? Right? Povetkin did none of that. Excuse me. Wach did none of that. right? Povetkin literally seemed to have a walk in the park on this fight. Anyway, that's how I see it. Let me hear from you. Leave your comments for me here online. Visit us at gamblersadvisory.com. Thanks for stopping by.